Recording in progress.
Llewellyn, can you help us with the roll call?
Thank you, Chairperson. We have in the meeting yourself, Honorable Binto Vigaba. I have Honorable Atuens. I have Honorable Siwela, Honorable Letsie. I have Honorable Van der Walt, Honorable Mashabela, Honorable Ngobo, Honorable Sukers, and Honorable Hendricks. Thank you, Chairperson. I've got no apologies for the members of the committee, although we have received apology for Minister as she needs to be in an NCCC meeting at this time. Thank you, Chairperson.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Brown. So that is the roll call of the meeting. Can you just write for us the agenda, Llewellyn? Today we will be dealing with the teenage pregnancy and comprehensive sexual education, which is the presentation that we will be getting from the department. And I must say that this is one of the topics that are very emotional and very close to our hearts, all of us, because we have children as well, we are parents as well, we've got siblings as well, we've got families who go through these emotional problems. And then the reality, they really are a societal matter. And they're a matter that really needs everybody to become, but rather be there to support each and everyone. So members, on the agenda, like I have said, we are dealing with these two topics. Can we then adopt the agenda?
If you see the horse going forward, you're a left-brained person. If you see it going backward, you're right-brained.
Thank you very much. Is it Honorable Van der Walt?
Apology, Chair, yes.
Oh, okay. And
Chair, I second adoption. I second the proposal to adopt minutes as they are.
oh, okay. Thank you very much. We are unanimous in this one. You see, it's the opposition that is moving and seconding. Siyavuma, siyaqhuba. Thank you very much, honorable members, for adopting the agenda. At this time, I will give the Deputy Minister to lead the department by a political overview, and then when you are done, immediately, DM, you can then give to the DG and the department to deal with the presentation. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Chairperson. Good morning, members. Good morning to DG and Basic Education team. Chair, thank you very much for this opportunity that the Portfolio Committee has presented to DBE to come and present on the status and of teenage pregnancy and sexuality education. As you correctly put it, Chair, that it's an emotional matter, it's a societal matter, it's a matter that we must all together pull our heads and hands together to address it, because it has an impact in the future of our country. The young ones, especially the girl child, they are participants in the future of this country, so we should not leave their lives to be disgruntled and due to teenage pregnancy and lack of knowledge and awareness. This is what we must do, all of us, and understand the trauma and the stress they undergo when they are pregnant, because there's a tendency of them being neglected by their own families, especially the girl child, and also ridiculed by the boyfriend's family. That's why always when I look around, see a girl child carrying a baby on his back, wearing school uniform, moving around, coming to this family to request them to sit with the baby. They send her away with the baby, and it's so stressful. If really, as members of the portfolio committee, members of parliament can understand that this societal matter needs all of us to come together. But we are here with the DG and the team, Dr. Whittle, to present. Let me take this opportunity, through your permission, Chair, to give to the DG, Mr. Mweli. DG.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Minister, Honorable Chair, honorable members, colleagues, good morning. Chair, I need to just indicate that as it has been the norm, I'm on my way to the Eastern Cape, but I'm part of this meeting. As the Deputy Minister correctly observed, we are dealing with a matter which is just broader than basic education. Indeed, a people-centered approach would be the best approach to take in this regard. We are presenting statistics sourced from the Department of Health in the main, but we do also source statistics from other agencies and donors that we are working with. But in the main, the statistics around learner pregnancies, prevalence in HIV and AIDS, and so on, we draw that from the Department of Health. We will be presenting the comprehensive sexuality education which we have presented to your honorable committee before, Chair. And our approach, as it has been before, is just to indicate our response to some of the challenges that are bigger than us. And would appreciate if members, as they would always do, indicate areas of weaknesses in our approach, and also suggest possible ways of tackling this, which is part of the second biggest, or an outcome of the second biggest pandemic in the country as observed by the President. So essentially two parts, but one. The first part is around sharing some statistics around learner pregnancy, HIV and AIDS prevalence. And then the second part really would be a response through the CSE, which will be presented by Dr. Grenville Whittle. We've tried to just also deal with the issue of acronyms or abbreviations. In each of the slides, there was an advice that indicated that we might want to have a section that deals with that, but Dr. Whittle will deal with that as well. I'm, if you allow, Chair, going to request Dr. Whittle to then quickly take us through what we have prepared to present to the Portfolio Committee. Dr. Whittle?
Thank you very much, DG, Deputy Minister. Good morning, and good morning to the Chair and to all the members of the Portfolio Committee. We have quite a lengthy presentation today, but I'll try and move through it as quickly as I can. I hope that you can see the slides, Chairperson.
Yes, Dr. Whittle, we can see them.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chair. So as DG has indicated, we have provided an acronym slide just to give you a sense of all of the acronyms that we use. I'll try and go briefly through them and you know, as we pick up these in the presentation, I'll try and remind you what they stand for. So just by way of introduction and setting a context, in South Africa, between 10 and 19 years, we find adolescent girls and young women, and they make up 12.67% of the total population in South Africa. They are also argued to be probably the most vulnerable cohort of all the age cohorts that we have as part of the population. Adolescent girls and young women face complex and serious challenges during the course of their lives. Poverty, HIV, and STI infections, and a range of health-related issues, early and unintended pregnancies, gender-based violence, rape, and abuse. We have seen, and various studies have pointed to this, that over the last 4 decades or so, we've seen positive developments in terms of a decrease in teenage fertility rates. But in South Africa, as you have seen from the media of late, the numbers remain unacceptably high. Consequently, AGYW bear the brunt of a range of negative consequences. When girls fall pregnant, 1/3 of them don't return to school. And if they don't return to school, they're known to experience multiple pregnancies post the first pregnancy. When girls do return to school after they've fallen pregnant, we know that in most cases they're able to not get pregnant again. Girls who fall pregnant, their health outcomes are often compromised. Mortality rates for teen pregnancy are higher, and many don't have access to healthcare. And the Department of Health tracks this quite closely, and I'm sure we could get some of those mortality rates and so on provided to the committee if that is required. A lack of education also results in knowledge gaps, particularly knowledge gaps about sex and sexuality, which often contributes to teen pregnancy. And then importantly, teenage pregnancy leads to the creation of poverty traps. It traps families in poverty, and this impacts quite significantly on social and economic development of our country. So to give you a bit of further context about this particular cohort that we are talking about. So in the world today, there's more than 36.9 million people living with HIV, and 19.1 million of those are girls and young women globally. In South Africa, as you can see, the biggest dots in Eastern and Southern Africa, there is South Africa, with 4.4 million adolescent girls and young women impacted by HIV, and this constitutes 23% of the global average. Girls are 4 times more likely to be impacted or affected by HIV compared to boys, as you can see. 46% of sexual abuse complainants in South Africa are children. 15.1% of all the girls, 15.1% of girls experience rape, sexual harassment, verbal abuse, or bullying in schools, and I've provided some of the references in the slides. And then we currently have about 1,300 new infections with HIV of adolescent girls and young women in South Africa per week. That is an astounding figure. It's huge. But just to indicate to the committee that that figure has come down quite substantially over the last 5 years, from about 2,300 in 2012 to about 1,300 in 2017, and that's per the prevalence study conducted by the HSRC every 5 years. So just in terms of gender-based violence and rape, and these are stats from the recent crime stats released by the South African Police Services, 202,000 cases of contact crimes and sexual offences against women, 64,000 cases against children were reported in 2019-20. South Africa has a femicide rate where men kill women 5 times the global average. 2,695 counts of murder against women were recorded in 2019, 2020, and these are often by intimate partners, husbands, boyfriends. In COVID-19, there's been an exponential increase in gender-based violence. Government Command Center recorded 120,000 cases in the first 3 weeks of lockdown, and these include cases of sexual assault and rape. And our president has referred to these, the massive increase in sexual offenses as a second epidemic, often linked to mental health issues. And it has affected, millions of women around the world, but particularly in South Africa. So I thought, just in terms of the cohort that we're looking at, the 10 to 19-year-olds, that it is important to give you a bit of context about what this particular cohort deals with. So 20 to 34% of children experience contact crime and violence before the age of 18. 12% of children report neglect. 16% of children report emotional abuse, often in the home. Cases of attempted rape against children increased by 4.3%, and this is again according to the crime stats. And 17,118 cases of rape against children were reported in that period. So to turn to the impact of COVID on particularly unintended consequences for AGYW, adolescent girls and young women. So some of the key findings of some of the work done by the South African development community. School closures have impacted in East and Southern Africa 127 million children. 1 million girls in sub-Saharan Africa are at risk of not returning to school because of pregnancy. So SADC has seen a 65% increase in early pregnancies during the lockdown period of 2020. For the most vulnerable children, education remains life-saving. Education is protective. It provides spaces of support, providing nutrition through school feeding programs, psychosocial support, and sexual and reproductive health services to learners. Comprehensive sexuality education provided in school is a critical support and service for adolescent girls and young women. In South Africa, and you see the reference on top, in South Africa, 37% spike in GBV complaints, which is also articulated by the crime stats. Children are often witnesses or victims of domestic violence, and this was exacerbated during lockdown when people were locked into their homes. And we have the harmful impact on physical health, mental development and well-being, particularly of children and girls. And school closures and containment measures resulted in the loss of education and, of course, the social protection that I referred to in the previous slide. And this, of course, results in significant increases in teen pregnancies, sexual exploitation, sexual violence, and forced and early marriages, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa. And I'll in some of the further slides, we'll show some of the data. So teen pregnancies in South Africa, about 30% of teenage pregnancy, 30% of all girls will experience teen pregnancy before the age of 20. I've provided the reference there, Chairperson, but recently this particular number has been questioned and debated, and certainly we can make some of those data available as well. And this particular slide points to national deliveries in our health facilities. It's a slide that's provided to us by the Department of Health, and it shows the increases that we've seen since 2017 to 2020. You can see the jump from 2019, while the jump from 2019 to 2020, and that jump is mostly explained by COVID and lockdowns and the fact that girls were out of school. You can also see quite worrying numbers of children between the ages of 10 and 14 who have fallen pregnant in each one of those years. So in 2017, that number was about 2,000, 3,200 in 2018, 3,800 in 2019, 3,700 in 2020. And for the first quarter, it ends at just over 1,000. You can see that the annual average at the moment for the first quarter, which where it should be at 25% is currently standing at 30%. I will turn now, Chair, to look very briefly at each one of the provinces, and just to indicate to you that the y-axis on the side is different, and so I don't want you to get the impression that these are equivalent, but you can see even in the Eastern Cape there's been a jump from 2019 to 2020. The dark blue shade at the bottom constitutes children, girls between 10 and 14 years of age. These are the figures for the Free State, just over, excuse me, just over 6,000 for 2019 and 2020, and also they above the 25 benchmark that we would set per term. Gauteng deliveries, this has been extensively discussed in the media. In the case of Gauteng, they've added the terminations of pregnancies, which is why they're talking about a 23,000 number. Excuse me, the deliveries in KZN, also quite high, almost 35,000 for 2020. Limpopo deliveries, almost 20,000 for 2020. Just above the expected average there as well for the first quarter. Mpumalanga, just under 14,000 in 2020, as you can see, just over 12 in 2019. The Northern Cape has come down from 2019 to 2020, but the Northern Cape has very specific challenges, and I will return to those a little bit later on, Chair. The Northwest, also above 8,000 girls who gave birth in health facilities, and quite substantially above the benchmark for the first quarter at 34%. The Western Cape, excuse me, just under 12,000 in 2020, and also slightly above where you would expect them to be in 2021. So, Chair, this is quite an important slide, because what it shows is that the deliveries in facilities per the total cohort of women that give birth in health facilities, you can see that the Northern Cape has got the highest rate, and has consistently over the last 3 years it has had the highest rate there. It jumped quite substantially with almost a complete percentage point from 2020 to 2021. And then Gauteng has got the lowest rate, and Gauteng has had the lowest rate for a while. You can see it's 7.1, 7.5 in 2019-20, and then 8.9 in 2020 to 2021. If you look at the national average, it's kind of hovered around 13%, so it stayed flat. But you can see the bump that we've experienced because of COVID, and that has added quite a large number of girls to this particular cohort. So if we look at the percentage of adolescents who gave birth in 2020 by province, again, it shows you that the Northern Cape has got the highest rates of teen pregnancy, and Gauteng has got the lowest rate at 1.98%. It's important when we do these calculations to compare the number of teen pregnancies with the size of the female teen population in the province, to give you a sense of whether that rate is ticking up or staying flat, or in fact coming down. So what are the statistics telling us about teen pregnancy in South Africa at the moment? So firstly, and quite importantly, that schools provide a protective environment to children. The fact that so many children were out of school last year is in fact testimony to the protective nature of education. We've got quite a significant cohort of adolescent girls and young women in the basic education sector. And so one of the key objectives of us as the department is to ensure that we retain learners in schools, because schools provide a protective environment. We do know, Chair, that girls do not fall, they don't drop out because they fall pregnant. They fall pregnant because they have dropped out. And so schooling as a protective factor is quite an important aspect of what we're trying to achieve. Adolescent girls are more vulnerable and face many overlapping challenges in society. So you could see the incidence rates for girls, the HIV prevalence rates, 4 times higher for girls than for boys. Girls, as you know, are more prone to high levels of sexually transmitted infections, and they're more vulnerable to gender-based violence, to rape, and to abuse. They often experience gender inequity and power imbalances in relationships, and are often not able to negotiate safe sex in those relationships, particularly if they are having relationships with men that are slightly older than them. And then, of course, poverty and inequitable access to health and social services also contribute to teen pregnancy. COVID-19, as we've shown in the slides, have also exacerbated the problem, have left girls more vulnerable, and that's why you see an uptick in the number of teen pregnancies during that lockdown period of 2020, and as you can see also for the first quarter of 2021. Teen pregnancy statistics also reveal that the numbers are quite high, even though these are not new. And this is an urgent matter that I think we all have to deal with, as the Deputy Minister and the DG has said. Approximately 33% of girls who fall pregnant are not coming back to school. This often leads to multiple pregnancies and poverty traps. And the complexities that underlie these teen pregnancies are many. And in order for us to address them effectively, we have to understand what they are and how they operate in the lives of young girls and in society more broadly. Rape, child abuse, and GBV are highly prevalent in this cohort, and this contributes to the issue of teen pregnancy as well. Significant increases, as reported by the Minister of Police, in GBV cases during the COVID-19 national lockdown. And Chair, most of these pregnancies under the age of 14, are probably constituting a statutory rape. And we, want to work with schools and school principals to ensure that those are reported as such, that they're investigated, and that those perpetrators are brought to book. Often, these girls are raped by older men, and that's why they fall pregnant. We do know that in the South African case, I think it's a Children's Act, allows sexual activity between adolescents above 12, when the age gap is not greater than 2 years. And so that has to obviously be taken into account when one investigates these cases that would probably constitute a statutory rape. And, importantly, it shows that we need a multi-sectoral approach if we are to address the systemic vulnerabilities and the structural drivers that are leading to teen pregnancy. So we commissioned a study, Chair, in 2012. A study was funded by UNICEF, and it's probably the most comprehensive study that I'm aware of that has been conducted on pregnancy among school-going adolescents. The key findings of this particular study is that with proper interventions and access to focused sexual and reproductive health services and education, comprehensive sexuality education, we've been able to shift the positive attitudes that communities had towards teen and early pregnancies in the 90s. 2/3 of women now are reporting early pregnancies as either unwanted or unplanned, and that women, 2/3 of women are now valuing educational inspiration or aspirations instead. We've seen a very good increase in contraceptive use, also amongst this particular cohort. And as I've indicated earlier, that fertility over the last, since the 1960s has consistently decreased around the world. A teen pregnancy, and it's quite a key finding, was as a result of school dropout and not often the cause of school dropout. So schooling remains probably the best protective factor against a teen pregnancy. Social conditions and of course environment influence teen fertility rates as well. And in this particular slide, and this is from the same study, it gives you a better understanding of learner pregnancy and how it happens. These factors, often overlap. These factors listed in the big bubble often overlap to create the vulnerabilities of adolescent girls and young women, as well as the risk of early and unplanned pregnancies. These factors are structural, they're sexual, biomedical, and relational. And it shows the complexities of the learner pregnancy issue that we're confronted with in South Africa. Economic barriers, poor school performance, poverty, single parent or child-headed households, poor access to health or to contraceptives, power imbalances in relationships, particularly when girls are having relationships with older men, multiple sexual partners, biomedical drivers, and then critically, the study identifies gaps in comprehensive sexuality education knowledge. So gaps in what children understand about sexuality that often contributes to teen pregnancy. So understanding then what is required if we understand these drivers of teen pregnancy. So given the drivers that influence teen pregnancy, we are calling as DBE, and we've done this over the last probably 10 years, working together with other government departments as part of a multi-sectoral strategy to address teenage pregnancy. So we work, of course, with the Department of Health. We work very closely with the Department of Social Development, now with the Department of Women, Youth and People with Disability, of course with the Department of Justice, both in terms of how we access the register for sexual offenders, but also to ensure that those who are accused and found guilty are dealt with by the law. And then, of course, we report these matters to the South African Police Services, and we rely on them for the crime stats to then influence, the strategies that we have. Both the chair, the DG, and the deputy ministers refer to this important aspect of addressing teenage pregnancy. We have to work together as society. Finger pointing in this particular context is really not going to address the issues. And to, for us as government to work very closely with civil society, with communities, particularly with parents, to explain to parents what it is that we're trying to, to do, the importance of what we're doing, working with the religious communities, with traditional leaders, and of course with other stakeholders. So the role of the DBE and focusing specifically on education. Various UN studies have revealed that education is indeed a protective factor. There's various studies here. There's a REMI study in 2014 in Malawi that shows 35% reduction in school dropout when you work very specifically through conditional cash transfers to keep girls in schools, 40% reduction in early marriages, 30% reduction in teen pregnancies, and 64% reduction in HIV risk. In our context, Chair, we've been implementing the Keeping Girls in Schools program together with one of our partners, MIET Africa, for probably the last 5-6 years. And again, we can show positive impact of these. Schooling by its very nature is protecting girls against early teen pregnancy, but is also against HIV. We can see that higher educational attainment is itself associated with reduced risk of HIV prevalence later in life, and also with safer behaviors. And thirdly, keeping girls in school ensures that greater number of adolescent girls can access HIV prevention information in the context of CSE, but also other school-based campaigns. Other studies have shown that girls who drop out of school, particularly at an early age, are twice as likely to acquire HIV than those who actually stay in school. And so all of these studies point to the importance of keeping girls in school, because schooling in itself is protective. So the DBE policy environment, and Chair, I'm not going to spend too much time on this. I think that the committee, is well afraid with all of these. We have an integrated school health policy introduced in 2012. We work with a range of other government departments, particularly the Department of Health and the Department of Social Development. We have standard operating procedures for the provision of sexual reproductive health services in schools. And we have very recently, we've taken this particular policy through a consultation process. The policy has now been finalized, and we have recently submitted it to Cabinet for final approval. So we're expecting the DBE policy on the prevention and management of learner pregnancy in schools to be approved by Parliament in the next couple of weeks, and then the department will, proceed working with other stakeholders to implement that particular policy in school. So DBE is well positioned to respond to the complexities as part of a multifaceted approach. We have most of these young people are in our schools, and therefore provides a kind of a captive audience for us to work with them. We know that we need to encourage and work with young people to ensure that they are retained in schools. And then once they are in schools, to provide a comprehensive wraparound support to ensure that they stay HIV free and that they don't fall pregnant. So just in terms of some of the programs that we're currently running in our schools and across the sector. In terms of HIV prevention, we've had probably since 2020, we've had a conditional grant that supports us in implementing the revised HIV, STI, and TB policy in our schools. It allocates about 245 million rand a year, and it's disbursed from the DBE to all of the provinces where these programs are then implemented. We have the integrated school health program, as I've said, that we do with the Department of Health. We're working with the Medical Research Council to trial a particular intervention to test our interventions for adolescent girls and young people through a social impact bond. We do with various government agencies. We do the Education Plus initiative that particularly encourages girls and young women to stay in schools. We've got a gender-based violence and gender equity program that we've run, for the last 5 to 10 years in all our schools, and I'll speak a bit further about that. And then 2 years ago, just before the pandemic hit us, the minister launched the Let's Talk initiative, and this Let's Talk initiative focuses specifically on early and unintended pregnancy. And it brings girls together, girls who have been pregnant and who have gone through that experience of having a child while they're still a child, and the complexities of having to manage that, often without family support. And for those girls to then speak to other girls who have not yet been pregnant. Those discussions are often rich and fascinating. And, even as adults, I think we've learned quite a lot from those interactions with young people. Then we do specific AGYW programs that are school-based, but that don't happen during school time. And here we do the PEPFAR DREAMS program. Just to remind you, DREAMS is an acronym that stands for Determined, Resilient, Empowered, AIDS-free, Mentored, and Safe. And these are clubs generally where young people talk about the issues, and I will speak a little bit further about some of the impact that some of these programs have had. We do a program for AGYW that is funded by the Global Fund and supported by SANA. And then we've recently, I think about a year or two ago, we've signed a government-to-government agreement with the US government, and they provide some funding in addition to technical support. Some of those officials are on this call with us this morning, and they work across a range of districts with us. This is to just remind you, I think the last time we presented to the portfolio committee, we did touch on some of this. This is how we are going about addressing school-related gender-based violence. We target 5 key levers of the system. Our strategy is systemic. We target the curriculum and assessment. Here we work through life skills and life orientation. And of course, comprehensive sexuality education is a key component of what we're doing in that subject area. We've provided learning and teaching support materials to schools. We in the process of finalizing 9 state-owned life orientation textbooks from grades 4 to grade 12. We, in the last phases, we're putting together screening a process for these life orientation textbooks at the moment, and we're hoping that they will be in schools next year. Of course, Chairperson, the scripted lesson plans is something that you'll be well familiar with. It's caused quite a stir when we introduce them, and then of course linked to those scripted lesson plans, we've got learner workbooks as well as teacher guides that we provide to schools. In terms of teacher training and development, we've developed a life orientation teacher guide that will accompany those life orientation textbooks. We provide some training for life orientation teachers in terms of how to teach life orientation, including a comprehensive sexuality education. We've developed, working with the British Council and a few other partners, the University of South Africa, for example, we've developed a Teaching for All, which is a program that is aimed at teacher trainers. And we currently rolling this program out in 10 universities. We've just finalized an evaluation of that particular program. It shows very, very good promise, and certainly an evaluation that we can make available to the committee. Then, Chair, importantly, also as part of this training, since the DBE is taking over the responsibility for early childhood development from 2022, we've developed, working with some development partners, we've developed a gender responsive pedagogy toolkit, and we currently, we're being funded by the ETDP to roll this out for 4,000 ECD practitioners around the country. And this is because there's research that shows that by the age of 6, gender norms are often established in children. And so if those gender norms is one of, toxic masculinity, that's then what you'll have to deal with going forward. And in a country like ours, where we have very high rates, as I've shown, of femicide, of gender-based violence, certainly an important issue for us to address as early as we can. Co-curricular and enrichment programs, care and support services. Here we have various initiatives targeting young people, empowering. We're working with GEM-BEM clubs. We've introduced a protocol for the management and reporting of sexual abuse, working with the Department of Health to ensure that we've got health, youth-friendly health services, that we are able to provide post-violence care, and that we also look at the needs of the LGBTIQ community and ensuring that they are safe and protected within the basic education sector. And then lastly, Chair, we focus very clearly on advocacy and information, community engagements, engagements with young people. And at the end of this presentation, I'll show you an example of some of the work that we have been doing with young people, talking about some of the issues that they confronted with. So in terms of the AGY W program that we've started running in 2019 and that will end in 2022. Just to give you a sense of some of the work that we do here, we offer an age-tailored combination prevention program for adolescent girls and young women between 10 and 19. The program targets both in and out of school girls and young women. The in-school, of course, is the responsibility of the DBE, and we leave the out of school to be dealt with by the Department of Social Development. But in school, Chair, we don't deny services to boys that are coming forward and saying that they want to access the services, and so we provide testing for HIV, condom distribution, etc., to boys when they come and ask for them. And adolescent girls and young women will be introduced through the program through a number of entry points. They receive services via two main service components, and I'll talk a little bit about the core service and the layered services in a second. And the layered services are not necessarily provided in a specific order, but it depends on the needs of the learner. Chair, just to indicate that we work within the National Strategic Plan for HIV, STIs and TB. We work very closely with the South African National AIDS Council on all of these. These three goals are the goals that we focus on in basic education to accelerate prevention, to reduce new HIV and TB infections. And there we've done relatively well, not just in this particular cohort as basic education, but we've done well because new infections have come down with about 40% over the last 5 to 10 years. We work hard to reach all key and vulnerable populations, particularly girls and young women. And then, of course, to try to address the social and structural drivers of HIV, TB, and STIs. And we are responsible also for the implementation of the revised HIV policy in our schools. This is what the model looks like, Chair. And these constitute, these are part of the Adolescent Girls and Young Women program that we're rolling out in quite a few of our districts. So by way of core services, information, we provide information to these girls and young women. This is often linked to comprehensive sexuality education. We do a risk assessment for them. We offer HIV testing. We provide contraceptives, and we have a service plan. So whatever support they need, they can then come in terms of that service plan. In terms of the layered services, those are some of the services that we offer working with the Department of Health. HIV testing, TB, pregnancy testing and self-screening, emergency contraception for when a child is raped. We provide vending machines in some schools where children can access condoms, STI screening and investigation and treatment. We provide PrEP in some of our schools, and we provide post-violence care for children who are raped or assaulted. They can access ARTs, and we also provide treatment for TB. In terms of behavior, and this is often done through support clubs in schools. We provide peer education. We've got learner support agents that we train, and they funded sometimes by provinces themselves, sometimes by some of our development partners. Individual and group psychosocial support is provided. PrEP demand is created. We provide knowledge on sexual reproductive health, mental health support, physical activity. Also provide support in terms of substance use and abuse. We provide support for teen parents about how they can better take care of their babies. We provide some adherence support, often through clubs, so that the children know where they can come and get the HIV medication, as they need it. Then, in terms of the structure, here we provide academic support. Girls often come to after-school programs or homework classes. Specifically catering for girls. We provide some career guidance through a series of jamborees. We support children when they have fallen pregnant to return to school, because we know how important that is. We provide, often working with the National Financial Student Aid Scheme and our jamborees, so that young girls and women know how to apply for NSFA support so that they can access higher education. We provide dignity packs to support children through menstruation. And then, of course, critically also, Chair, we are increasingly focusing on the role of men and having discussions between men and boys to address issues of youth leadership, but also gender-based violence. This gives you a sense of where we're working currently with some of our partners, and the partners are listed there in the legend. And you can see, Chair, we work across most of the country, but particularly in high HIV prevalence districts. These are also districts often with high levels of crime and violence, but they're also districts with very high levels of teen pregnancy. And so that's where we roll out these AGY programs. So, Chair, let's then turn to comprehensive sexuality education. So the DBE leads in the provision of comprehensive sexuality education as part of the government response. CSE, as you know, is a curriculum-based process of teaching and learning about the cognitive, emotional, physical, and social aspects of sexuality. CSE is offered in formal settings. It's scientifically accurate. It's culturally relevant. It's based on human rights. It's age and developmentally appropriate. And CSE aims to equip children and young people with knowledge, skills, attitudes, and values that would empower them to realize their health, well-being, and dignity, to develop respectful social and sexual relationships, to consider how their choices affect their own well-being and that of others, and to understand and ensure the protection of their rights throughout their lives. These are some of the objectives that we have set ourselves for comprehensive sexuality education, to identify and report sexual abuse, to encourage young people to remain HIV negative and remain on treatment if they are positive, to, of course, prevent teenage pregnancy, to prevent bullying and to deal with negative peer pressure, to know where to get help if they need it, if they're raped, or where to get support for TB or ARTs, where to get contraception, and where to get help if they are struggling with substance abuse. Critically, CSE aims to keep children in school for as long as possible, but often until they have completed grade 12, because we know how protective schooling is. This is the CSC implementation approach that we have used. This approach has changed over the years, Chair, primarily because of some of the key findings of the 2012 pregnancy report done by the HSRC that said that a lot of our children do have gaps when it comes to sexuality knowledge. We've developed a series of scripted lesson plans for grade 4 to 12. We've piloted those. We've trained school governing bodies. We're working very closely with parents. We've trained school management teams and to sensitize them to the importance of this work. We've linked it to adolescent sexual reproductive health services, and we have strengthened referrals so that children who do want to access those services are able to. We've introduced a Learn and Educator mentorship program outside of school, of course, and here our learner support agents continue to play an important role to link teachers, parents, and learners together. This is what we're focusing on in terms of the curriculum. In the intermediate phase, 4 to 6, it's really about the safety of learners, to empower them against abuse and bullying. And again, as you can see, the high rates of pregnancy in the 10 to 14-year-old age category, it just emphasizes the importance of this work that we do. In the senior phase, grade 7 to 9, is risk reduction, contraception, and HIV prevention messages, how to prevent GBV, how to develop voice, and also how to make the right choices. And all of those matters that we've highlighted in the senior phase are then consolidated, particularly around risk reduction, accessing contraception, and the importance of schooling, are then emphasized in the further education and training band. So we, obviously, Chair, in terms of the backlash that we've had when we introduced the scripted lesson plans, I thought it's important to just point out what the differences are. So sexuality education is about relationships. It's developmental, it's age appropriate. It does not compromise the innocence of children. It addresses the whole person, psychological, emotional, mental, physiological aspects of the human being, and it's based on a value system. It's offered in our school. Sex education is something completely different. It's the how of sex. It's really not the kind of thing that, as a responsible government and a responsible department, we, want to get involved in. So I thought it's important to just talk through some of these, Chair. These are some of the issues that have been raised in the public domain. That CSE leads to early sexual initiation. All of the evidence that we've seen is that CSE leads to later debut, sexual debut, and it also leads to more responsible sexual behavior. CSE deprives children of their innocence is the myth. And the fact is that evidence shows that children benefit from receiving appropriate information that is scientifically accurate, non-judgmental, and age and developmentally appropriate. CSE goes against our culture or our religion. CSE stresses the need for engagement with local context. And so we very keen from our side to continue to engage with traditional leaders, with religious communities and local stakeholders, to advocate for CSE and to have conversations about what some of the concerns are. The teaching of sexual pleasure is another one. The focus is not in our CSE is not on sexual pleasure, but on the prevention of these diseases that we're talking about, on healthy lifestyle choices and an avoidance of risky behaviors. Another criticism, Chair, has been that we focus too closely on the technical guidance of UNESCO, and that in fact this is an imported curriculum. Life orientation is based on our South African context. Yes, we have focused and we've obviously looked at the international technical guidance, but we have adjusted that in terms of the caps to our context. And then lastly, this notion that it is only parents, Chair, that can educate children about sexuality, that this is the role of the family, and that it should not be left to the state. The reality is that many parents do not engage with their children, communicate with their children about sex and sexuality, and therefore we acknowledge that parents have an important role to play, but we're also saying that CSE can complement that role. In cases where you have parents either drinking or abusing substances, or cases where the parent feels that because of cultural or religious reasons that parent does not want to get into discussions about sex and sexuality, it remains the responsibility of the state through comprehensive sexuality education to play that role. Chair, these I will not talk to, but they're certainly an important aspect of what we're trying to do. So what is the status? And we often are asked, so where are you? You've now piloted the scripted lesson plans, and how far are you with the introduction? So just to restate that we've been implementing comprehensive sexuality education since 2000. We're aware that there's been some weaknesses in how we have implemented it. We know that in many cases there were teachers who were either saying that we don't want to teach this, or the way in which it was taught in classes was just weak. And so we've developed these scripted lesson plans to provide very clear guidance to teachers on how to do this within the classroom. We've developed a series of manuals that we've distributed to many of our schools to educate, to capacitate rather, educators to teach comprehensive sexuality education. We've also developed manuals for working with school governing bodies and to sensitize them. And then, of course, to work with school management teams as well. We know, Chair, that we need to work very, very closely with communities. And so before we take scripted lesson plans into any particular school, we work very closely with parents and with community members. And we've often been very well received by these communities in our schools. Access to adolescent sexual and reproductive health services. We have also prioritized these, and we often do these through the Integrated School Health Program. And we do out of school referrals to clinics and to health facilities, particularly those that are youth friendly. So just to indicate some of the impact of our HIV prevention programming and comprehensive sexuality education, I want to just talk about two initiatives. The one is the DREAMS prevention program that I've already spoken about, and then a program that was run, Zimele, that was run in the Western Cape, I think across Langa and Guguletu between 2016 and 2019 by the Desmond Tutu HIV Foundation. So in terms of DREAMS, Chair, this is the DREAMS approach. Focuses on a comprehensive package of core interventions, particularly targeting girls and young women. It includes structural factors. It focuses on gender-based violence, on exclusion from economic opportunities, particularly for young women, and a lack of access to secondary school. And so DREAMS encourages girls to stay in schools. It gives you the 4 original districts that DREAMS was implemented in, and we've since expanded the reach of DREAMS. These are some of the findings of the evaluation that was conducted. You can see between 2018 and 2021, how in those districts where we've implemented DREAMS, we've been able to reduce new incidents of HIV, which means new infections, among young girls from 7% to 3%. So it's a reduction of 4% in those 4 DREAMS districts. This one focuses specifically on reductions in the city of Johannesburg metropolitan area. And again, you can see significant decrease in new infections from 6% in 2018 to 2% in 2021. So that's great achievement for this particular program. This one does this by 1,000 per population. So 10.3% in the non-DREAMS in 2017 reduced to 20%, and then 9.9 in 2017 and reduced to 6.9% in 2020. This again shows you that just differently. And then in terms of the Zimele project, again, as I've said, it was run by the Desmond Tutu HIV Foundation, focusing on adolescents and young women between 10 and 24. Again, a comprehensive, integrated, sustainable model of adolescent health provision. And this is some of the findings of the independent evaluation that was conducted. Firstly, that adolescents require comprehensive wraparound services with multiple entry points across the age continuum. In the lower grades, you obviously have to focus on safety, bodily safety, and of course, in the later years, it's about risk reduction. CSE, which is CSE offered in schools, often drives demand creation and improves uptake of sexual reproductive health services that is so important for young people to protect themselves, and that it should be offered in tandem with differentiated models of adolescent healthcare. The key point here, Chair, is that there's no one size fits all for young people. Some of them would prefer to access services in schools, others may prefer to access services in health facilities, and it's really for us to work with them to adjust our models to cater for their specific needs. School health programs, Zimele finds, are an effective, feasible, safe, and acceptable way to reach adolescents of school-going age. And of course, Chair, this is so important because this is also one of the key issues raised in the National Development Plan, that what we want to do as a sector is to use schools as sites of delivery, because this is where we find our young people. It does say that we need to engage more with teachers, parents, and caregivers, and improve the acceptability of these school health programs as well as CSE. And of course, you know, this is the debate I think that we need to engage in from our side, is to really listen to the voices of teachers and parents and caregivers and what their concerns are, and how we can go about as a department to address those. HIV education programs need to adopt a public health approach and include an approach based on gender norms and power dynamics. And as I've indicated, we do exactly the same in our programs. This is quite an important point, that young men and boys cannot be left out of these discussions. They cannot be left out of these programs. And so increasingly, even in our discussions with the Global Fund and with SANAC, we're saying that there has to be a greater focus on men and boys. And then, of course, programs should be deployed in tandem. They shouldn't focus on one issue. They should be integrated, focus on both gender norms, as well as the prevention of GBV in schools. So these then, Chair, and I'm coming to the conclusion, are some of the strategies to reduce learner pregnancy, specifically in the basic education sector. We're encouraging schools to report pregnancy, particularly pregnancy of those children under the age of 14, because that's probably rape, certainly is abuse. And we've developed a protocol for the management and reporting of sexual abuse and harassment that we continue to engage our districts and our school principals on, about how they implement that particular protocol. We've improved the implementation of our policies and our guidelines, and this is an issue that I will come back to in the next slide, to continue to create partnerships for multi-sectoral, for a multi-sectoral approach. So partnerships, not just with, government alone, Chair, cannot address this particular issue. We have to work with civil society, we have to work with parents, but we also have to work with learners and with their formations, talking to young people to address, these issues, to reduce child abuse in schools, as I've said, to encourage reporting and to ensure that those who are found guilty are properly dealt with. And then, as I've indicated, we have taken a policy on the prevention and management of learner pregnancies in schools to Cabinet. And we're hoping that in the next little while, Cabinet will approve this particular policy. I thought it's important, Chair, to just talk a little bit about this policy, because this policy will form the basis of how we as the department will continue to address teenage pregnancies going forward. In terms of the policy goals, is to reduce the incidence of learner pregnancy through the provision of quality CSE, and to give children, young people in schools, access to adolescent and youth-friendly sexual and reproductive health services, either in school or through referral. And then 2, to promote the constitutional right of girls to education by ensuring that they are not excluded from school as a result of pregnancy and birth, and to provide a supportive environment for the continuation of learning. It's so important that when children fall pregnant and they've given birth, that they are returned to school, because if they don't, they're likely to have multiple pregnancies. This is what the policy focuses on. It provides an enabling environment that supports all learners and prevents discrimination against girls who are pregnant. In terms of prevention of learner pregnancy, to provide a comprehensive pregnancy prevention information and sexual reproductive health services, to provide ongoing care, counseling, and support to learners who are pregnant, also encouraging schools through impact mitigation to continue to provide reasonable support to children who are pregnant, and to allow them, as soon as they strong enough, ready enough to come back, to do so. There's very interesting research been conducted a few years ago by the Medical Research Council that shows that when mothers are supportive, children are more likely to return to school. And so part of this is also to work with families and with mothers and fathers to ensure that when children have been pregnant, that they come back to school as soon as they can. And then lastly, Chair, and this is certainly not least, is for us to ensure that the policy is implemented on the ground. We want to form some management structures where we also want to invite civil society, development partners to sit on and to report on a continuous basis on learner pregnancy to our management structures through HEDCOM, Council of Education Ministers, but also to review the impact, the efficacy of the policy every 5 years. So finding a way forward, and this is in summary, Chair, fertility is declining and has been declining not just in South Africa, but globally, probably over the last 40 years. But as you know, our rates of teen pregnancy remain unacceptably high. Our incidence rates as a country, we've done really well in terms of these reductions from 0.85% in 2012 to 0.84% in 2017, 2,300 to 1,300 over that period, new infections amongst girls, but also broadly at community level, 40% reduction. Although these numbers remain significantly high for young women and girls. There is a need to address the structural barriers of poverty, unemployment, substance abuse, rape, gender-based violence, and transactional sex. And unless we address these things in tandem, we're going to struggle to bring down these very high rates of teen pregnancy. Ensuring retention of children in school, as I've said, probably the best protective factor that children can have is remaining in school, and then to accelerate the implementation of the policy on the prevention and management of learner pregnancy in schools as soon as Cabinet has approved that particular policy. Chair, this one, if you will indulge me, is a program that the Minister will launch formally later this year. It's a program that brought teachers and learners together in schools to talk about issues of sexuality, teen pregnancy, HIV infection, and so on. And the SABC has agreed to screen a series of 13 episodes for us that will start in January. So I hope that this plays and that you can hear it.
There's no sound from my side.
You are not alone. We also cannot hear a thing except to see some ghosts flying high and low. Thank you.
Okay, no, my apologies, Chair. I unfortunately have no clue about how to get the sound going, but I think what we will do is to share the clip with you. It's quite a pity that you can't see it, but Chair, that brings us to the end of the presentation. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Whitler. Oh, DM.
Chair, this is the presentation. I'm sorry. I was busy writing here. This is our presentation, and we hope to receive comments and questions from members. Thank you, Chair.
All right, thank you, TM. I have the hand of Honorable Moratseta, Honorable Hendricks, Honorable Van der Walt, Honorable Litsia, Honorable Suela, Honorable Dr. Tembekwayo, those are the hands now that I see. In
Honorable,
Honorable
Chair, it's Honorable Sukas here. I have just struggled with my gadget, but I've just raised my hand. If Chair can just note that. Thank you.
Okay, all right. It's fine. Dada Moratseta?
And mine also, Chair, sorry about that.
Okay, all right.
Modula Stulo, thank you very much for the opportunity granted. And we want to welcome and appreciate this opportunity and to deal with this one of the most sensitive issues which is affecting not only the education system or the Department of Basic Education, but also affecting our entire communities in totality. We must rise up here and say we welcome the presentation. It is indeed well-oiled and very much enriching, especially that it addresses the practicality part of it. The challenge, Mudula Studio, of our education system in South Africa, which I believe we are now appearing to be waking up to address, is that we often fail to address the whole person. And concentration on the academic part and leaving the real person behind, it's no good. It is not. Going to take us in the body, soul, and spirit. In principle, we must rise up here and say, we commend them, it is gonna take us somewhere. Mudulas too, my own research, whether it is scientific or unscientific, but this is my own research, is that many, I'm in the church, I'm in the community, I'm everywhere in politics. My observation is that those things that we normally don't want to talk about, even from the church point or the church perspective, the things that we do not want to talk about in life, often come down to boggle us or deal with us. Traditionally, it was taboo for our communities to engage their own children on the matters of sexuality, so to put it. It was taboo, abominable. We want to commend the Department of Basic Education for coming up with concepts and approach such as this. You see, our kids must be taught what is right and what is wrong from the onset. They should not always be taken up by unnecessary surprises. It hurts me if I were to indicate that during my schooling career, there is a young teenager, girl, a teenager, who dropped out of the school because at one stage, when she stood up, there was a red spot on the desk where she was sitting. And we laughed. And when we laughed her, she felt so intimidated such that the end product was she dropped out of school. And even today, sometimes I can see her. She was a bigger girl. That she dropped because it was not good. Sexuality, over comprehensive sexuality education, Csc, negative peer abuse, drug abuse, unprecedented dropouts cannot be divorced from each other. And therefore, let me conclude by saying, because of this challenge that we're having with the studio, I want to say to the department, we appreciate and welcome the policy management on this sexuality education and prevention. But at the same time, we want to say, let it be very clear how it is going to be cascaded down to the school level. Because that is where the drama is unfolding. So that these kids, with all these measures and good policies intact, they must at the end of the day be the beneficiaries. And then lastly, also, we want to welcome the notion from the department to say, let us keep these kids in our schools so that we reduce the high rate of uncalled for and unnecessary teenage pregnancies. So I rest my case, Chairperson. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Andrews.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair, and thank you very much for being so kind to let me join your committee and even make a contribution. Honorable Chair, Al-Jamaa would like to congratulate the department for its programs to keep learners occupied and to empower them while they are at school. This seems to be working, but the bad news is that they tell us, and we have a 2-hour program that we sponsor every day on radio, online radio, where learners run the show, and they tell us that they appreciate the assistance they get while they're at school, but on Fridays, they can't wait for Fridays and then they go wild. So that is a worrying concern in that while the learners don't seem to have a quarrel with what the department is doing, they just go wild over the weekend, and it's boozing, it's drugs, and they know that it's unlawful, and they say we don't blame the government, we blame ourselves. Having said that, Honourable Chair, funding from European Union, America, our own foundations must not push European and Western values, but African values. I haven't seen a focus on the fatherhood that Chief Albert Lutuli promoted and the legacy left behind. We don't hear about the support staff that the late Queen of the Zulus had, and the redance just took place. So I'm sure there are lessons to learn from that. African values obviously must be strengthened by the equality clauses in our constitution. When I got the president's support for full employment, what I had in mind is that young learners who do not pursue tertiary education must be guaranteed employment. So Al-Jamaa, we are the only political party with a parliamentary constituency office, so that means it's not party-based for learners, and we've appointed an administrator, and we pay the administrator to bring the issues of learners to Parliament via the constituency offices. We're obviously concerned that coloured female learners are getting the short end of the stick, and more needs to be done. But our principals, they seem to fill the gap. So we are throwing our weight behind a progressive student movement in 9 provinces, and we hear from the learners what their issues are, and we hope to share it with your portfolio committee and with your department. The scripted sexual lessons in Al-Jamaa was one of the vigorous opponents. We wanted to tar and feathers out of the officials, but we feel it's a good start. But then the values that I spoke about by Chief Albert Lutuli on fatherhood, the late Queen of the Zulus, and other African thought leaders must be built in so that we can capture the imagination of learners. Thank you very much, Honourable Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Van der Walt.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thanks for the presentation by the department and Dr. Whittle. Chairperson, one could work through these things, and I could tell you in another capacity, my party, my province, attending court cases on GBV, and often, too often, we still see that children as young as 6, 11, 14 are being raped by sometimes even leaders in the community like councillors, traditional leader, family members. Court cases, police cases miraculously disappear when you go continuously to follow up. But what is very concerning is that in most of these cases, even older men would go to a family and pay the family not to make a case or offer a cell phone or whatever, and it would reoccur again. So yes, within the education of this, surely, there is a lot of different facets. But I'm very concerned because it actually, if we really care, it actually touches something inside you and it won't go away, especially if the stats keep on increasing. Now, we all read the city press, the trends that were on the front page of underage birth rate crisis in the country, per province, etc. I've recently submitted a question of which I received a reply this week on specific grades where this is happening. And I'm not at all pleased with the response getting, because if we can get the stats through the health department and wherever, then I do not think a response that says, that, yeah, surely learners might not report, and we only use general household survey, which provides samples. Now, a few years ago, I asked a question on specific grades, because I think it should be compulsory to be reported. Just like we spoke on last week on principles that has to report cases, last week or the week before, sorry. I don't think there is harm in telling us where this is happening, in which grade, because we have to find out who is the most vulnerable amongst the vulnerable. And a few years I just started telling, I can even recall that I had stats from Limpopo, all school learner pregnancies, I think was 1,378, somewhere around there, could actually fill a complete new school. If you just look at the number of learners per schools, high schools, for example, 1,300 and something. So we need to know how this happens in every grade. If another department and stats can give us number of girls between their ages, I'm sure we can find out, and in which provinces, because it is important to know. Chairperson, I'm also very concerned about the period we are in, but in general. We try to push everything to teachers. Everything has got to become a teacher responsibility. Teachers are in classroom to teach learners so they can get a good education to find their way in the economics after school or after further studies, so that they can look after themselves, their families, and we know the extended families. But girls don't get there because of these stats. And it's very, very concerning. I don't want to go into the details because really, if you read this, it is horrific. I still maintain that I think the DG said when he started out that we must find solutions and all contribute. But one also gets tired. And Honorable Hendrik, you will soon find out if you come regularly. Very often solution is just a reason why we can't deal with your solution or remarks you make. For example, I've been asking so many times that students studying in some or other therapist direction cannot only be utilized in the health sector. Why are we not fighting to get some of those to do their after-year study or practical year, whatever we want to call it? In the early years, we used to refer to it as the Zuma year, but I will refrain from that today. And get these therapists in our schools. So if we know which grade, which schools are most effective, then surely we can work with the health department and higher education if need be, to place these students at these specific provinces and schools who needed them the most. Does it really matter if an occupational therapist, for example, sits in a hospital for a practical year or at a school? I think a school is very important. And I would really like to ask Dr. Whittle, I think it was round about slide 30, where you referred to that study that was done, teenage pregnancy in South Africa with a specific focus on school-going learners in 2012. I would really like to know to see how the stats then, 9 years ago, compared to the stats today. And should we not have another updated study done in the specific fields in this study? And I'm sure this study might be available to members who are interested, and or if you can just tell me it's still on the webpage somewhere, then I'll Google and find it myself. Chairperson, I'm not going to dwell on this. I am just saying we're not winning the fight against bullying. I acknowledge what we are trying to do as the department. But across all the schools in this country, around about 24,000, if I recall correctly, I don't know if we can really monitor them all. I don't even know if the provinces give us the exact factual stats. And surely we must get to it. I mean, to have a COVID-19 pandemic worldwide, the president of our country to announce that GBV is the second pandemic, and now this is a third pandemic. What is happening to us? And our girl learners, I mean, really, if a boy rapes you at school or have sex with you, statutory rape, there's got to be consequences. And a man who does that, why must girls and women forever have the babies and the men or the boy who did that? Because it takes two, and sometimes in these cases, when it's rape, it takes one. Why do we have girls to look after their pregnancies for 9 months, go sometimes through abortions, and raise that thing, and the boy or the man walks freely? Surely we must find an answer in this regard when it happens to our school-going women and ladies and girls and daughters, because they need an economic world. If you look across other countries and you find that women has got no rights, it can hardly be educated, we are fighting for our girls to get educated so they can make a living for themselves and reach their dreams. But we are not getting there because we are too scared to say in grade 1, 1,000 was raped this year. We've got to get the real statistics. Thank you, Chair. And I'm sorry that I'm getting all worked up, but I am heartbroken if you read these stats and then get a response in a written question to the Minister and the department responds that we must deal carefully with this type of information. Nonsense. There are no names attached. Nonsense. We want that. Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Letia.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Good morning, honorable members, the Deputy Minister, the team from the department. Honorable Chair, I would like to keep my video off. I think I've been having a little bit of a bandwidth problem this morning, so I would like to keep my video off. I would like to thank the department for a comprehensive presentation given to us this morning. That speaks to the big question, the big problem we have in this country of AGYW. Chairperson, I have about 4 questions, but before I'm going to go into my question, I would like to premise my questions on a point first, which is everybody knows, and the department in this presentation correctly clearly says that even though majority of these AGYWs are found in the basic education space, this is not a problem that can be resolved by the Department of Basic Education alone. It is a societal problem that needs all the role players in society to play a huge role in us defeating this pandemic, which I agree with Honorable van der Walt that it is indeed a pandemic, possibly after the pandemic of GBV. But this one also, the AGYW, is a pandemic in itself. So it needs all the role players. It needs the department as correctly. They've put themselves there as a stakeholder. It needs communities where we live. It needs us as members of parliament from different political parties to play our role in our constituencies, in our churches, in our different spaces where we exist. It needs South African Police Service as a critical stakeholder to also play a role. It means SAPS, once there's a child who's between 10 and 19 has fallen pregnant, SAPS must then investigate who impregnated that particular person, who might have infected that particular child with HIV. It means the parents should play an active role in making sure that we report such things. And sometimes where parents don't report, it needs neighbors to also go and report, because sometimes it's the family members, the uncles who provides for these kids, who rape them and impregnate them, and family members or a mother, because they are single, they are probably not working, they keep quiet because the bottom line that if I report this one as a breadwinner at home and all of that. So it needs a holistic approach in terms of community members playing their role, social development playing their role, South African Police Services playing their role, ourselves as members of parliament from different political parties using the airtime we have, using the spaces we share. We have in our constituencies, to educate our people to speak in one voice and not, to use this pandemic as a political campaign tool against each other, because this thing is a serious problem in this country. Clearly, if the numbers that are given to us here are to be believed, 4.4 million young kids in South Africa are living with HIV, and that is just those who have tested. The number might be big, so it means we need to play a critical role. Many of them have fallen pregnant. I'm sure we saw the numbers as presented by the department. So I just want to appeal to all of us here that this is a, yes, because of moral issues, some political parties might not want, to venture into that space, but we need to be honest. This is a serious problem that needs all of us, to really be open to being lobbied otherwise. And I think I want to lobby all political parties. Let's use this opportunity to go and play our role. We are public representatives voted for by millions of South Africans to lead them. And I'm appealing with you, colleagues, that let's go and play our role. Yes, there might be one or two. I mean, maybe before that, I must just say this comprehensive sexual education is not necessarily a sex education, as the department correctly puts it. It's not, the plan or the motive is not to teach children how to have sex, but it's just to teach them, if they are in that space, how to do it safely and all of that. Yes, there will be one or two schools that use sexualized graphics, but let's call them out, because that is not what they are supposed to do. Let's call them out, let's report them to the department, and when that is done, let the department act against those small. There are very few schools who probably do that, but it's not the majority of our schools. I think last comment to the department, maybe if we can, maybe in a written response, give us these numbers in terms of race. I think it's not rocket science, it's rocket science that a majority of these young kids might be coming from the BIC's community, Black, Indians, and Coloreds. And I think we must just, get the full picture from yourselves. If you do have those statistics, give them to us. Where are they? My assumption is that many of them are found in backgrounds where there's poverty, in rural areas and in townships. But just give us those numbers. And if there are specific schools that are, highly affected by this, also give us that part. Now to the questions, the department would have said there are 12.67% of AGYWs of the total population of these who are affected. My question there is that, is it 12.6% of the total population, or is there 12.6%, 12.67% of the population of young girls between 10 to 19 years? So this question might be confusing, but I wanted to know if it's, let's, for an example, say we've got 60 million South Africans. Is it 12.67% of 60 million South Africans, or is it 12.67% of, let's say, we've got 20 million of young girls who are between the ages of 10 and 19? Is it 12.67% of that? I'm asking this question because I think we need to, unpack these numbers for everybody, even those who are watching at home, to understand the biggest problem we have here. So on slide 41 of your presentation, when you speak about programs that we've done, your AFSA, NACOSA, Beyond Zero, Government to Government, and DREAMS program, there are specific districts where certain programs have been there, certain districts have got multiple of these programs. Is it possible for you to give us a breakdown of the impact, the positive impact of these programs per district? For an example, if you say in Capricorn and Limpopo, you have a combination of two programs. I'm just making an example. A combination of two programs. Before these two programs, we were sitting at this number, and after these programs were implemented, these are the positive impact that these programs would have made in terms of reducing the teen pregnancy, in terms of reducing the infection rate of HIV and AIDS on these kids. And why are these programs, if they're positive, maybe not implemented throughout the country, so that we are able to reduce these numbers? It is, lastly, Chairperson, it is highly stressful that a small province like the Northern Cape, has, in terms of the population, has recorded the highest number of percentages in terms of the population there of these AGYWs. It means we must then do a comparison where there is less activities, economic activities, where there is high number of unemployment, high number of poverty. We are likely to get a high percentage of those who are sexually active from a young age. And I agree with the previous speaker, Honorable van der Walt, that let's call these men, these animals, sometimes call themselves men out. Let's make sure that we report them to authorities and make sure that they are arrested on the spot. But this is not a Department of Education problem. It is a societal problem that needs all of us to play our role. And thank you very much to the department for a very comprehensive presentation this morning. Thank you very much. We're getting somewhere.
Honorable Suela. Honorable Suela. Dr. Temekwayo.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thanks DBE for the presentation. The first question is based on the impact of COVID-19 and in connection with the number of adolescent girls who had sexual relationship with older sexual partners, which continues to increase, including increasing sexual behavior amongst adolescents. I just want to know whether this section, what is mentioned here, does it include a number of teenage girls who get pregnant due to rape by their fathers and or other family members? And how are parents and victims capacitated to open up in such cases, and how are they included in the policy making related matters? The second question is based on the different stakeholders which are included in this section. There were a number of different stakeholders which are included, but right at the end of that presentation, the very same slide, they mentioned that there are those that require robust collaborations, and some of them mentions are the civil societies, etc. But my question is, why are those requiring robust collaborations not included right from the beginning? Because their contributions would yield different results to the problem we are facing. The next question is based on Let's Talk, the Let's Talk project and or program. I just would like to know, since it was mentioned that girls come together in this project, who are these participants? Where are they drawn from with reference to the province and the regions in South Africa, so that we can be able to determine the reliability and validity of the findings that are used, especially in connection with drawing up the policies. The other one is based on the core services. It's mentioned that the services are layered accordingly, inclusive of health, behavior, and structure. And the presenter kept on repeating the saying that in some schools, this is offered. My question is, which are these privileged schools in South Africa that are chosen to receive these layered services? And how and when will all other schools which are not included here be included if such possibilities exist? The other question is based on learner and educator mentorship with reference to outside of class. I just would like to know that did they do any study or evaluate the success or failure of this aspect? And how many learners and educators are receiving mentorship outside of class, specifically the learners? The last one is based on Zimele project that took place between 2016 and 2019, as it is reported. I would like to know what was the size of the respondents, where and who are these respondents, where are they drawn from? Because we were not giving, in actual fact, the whole scenario on the Simole project, but we only got information on the findings of the project conducted. Thank you, Chairperson, for the opportunity.
Thank you. Honorable Suela.
Thank you. Colleagues, members of joining.
Aibo, what is going on with your microphone or what? Honorable Suela.
Chairperson, can you hear me now?
Yay.
Hello? Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Chairperson, for the opportunity, and greetings to all colleagues. Let me join my colleagues in welcoming the presentation by the department, and safe to indicate that the problem of teenage pregnancy is well documented, and all of us are aware of it and its consequences. And we all agree that we don't want this thing to happen in our schools and also in our communities. But in any case, it does happen and creates a big problem for parents and also the future of these children. But the question that we therefore have to ask ourselves is, why is it like this? Is our school systems or societal systems failing to teach our children properly the values, the principles, and the beliefs that they should follow in order for them to live a meaningful life? What then should be done to ensure that we bring back that morality that is needed, not only in children, but also in parents and the perpetrators of all these crimes against humanity, the perpetrators of GBVs, and also the ones that feels it prudent even to get young girls to be impregnated at the tender age. It's a problem that we are facing as a society and as a school. It's our children and learners to be aware of the consequences that follows when one gets involved with sex activities. So the question of whether comprehensive sexuality education should or should not be done in schools is neither here nor there, because the results are out there for all of us to see. And therefore the department, with its constitutional duty and obligation to teach and educate our nation, should not shy away from doing so, because if they don't, we will have to live with the same problems for a very long time. Our cultural and religious beliefs should not deter the department from doing what is morally and constitutionally right to teach and educate our learners. And therefore, this responsibility, in my view, should not be appropriated to any structure or sector in a corner in a society. It should be our responsibility to do so, helping the department to continue to teach our nation. However, Chairperson, we cannot deal with this challenge without addressing the infrastructural problems that bedevils our schools and society. For example, in our schools generally, there is lack of recreational facilities, and with that, there is little or nothing that helps to entertain the learners, keep them busy, and the resultant effect of that is that they engage in all these activities that we don't want. There will be sports facilities. We'll have a play going to places where they get pregnant and causing problems for the parent who has
your network is well. Honorable Suela. Honorable Suela.
Who herself is also a parent. So, thank you, Chief.
We honestly could hardly hear you on your ending. But nonetheless, Honorable Sukers.
Thank you, Chair. If I may, I will keep my video off, Chair, because my internet connection is not very strong.
Okay.
I'll start by thanking the department for the presentation. I agree with all of my colleagues that yes, we are faced with a very serious challenge that requires a holistic approach by all of us in society. I have a number of things that I will, however, bring up, and the strongest one is that cultural and religious rights, I want to put on record, cannot be ignored when we are discussing issues of this nature, because schools, the Department of Education is not a static institution that is just standing there. It's made up of people, it's made up of individuals, families, and we are sending our children to school. So I want to put that on record. And then I must say, Chair, that we need a very serious discussion on the role of the state. The state cannot usurp the role of parents. Article 26.3 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights states that parents have a prior right to choose the kind of education that shall be given to their children. The state cannot assume a right to educate children that is against the values of their parents. There are a number of things that is highly concerning in the presentation of the department, which I won't go into, chief of which is what is not outright stated by Dr. Whittle on a number of issues. And it raises serious concerns for me as a mother of a child that is of school going age. And for that, I must underline that again, what I said earlier, it's not a static matter. You're dealing with individuals and you're dealing with families and you're dealing with people. So what has not been mentioned in the role in this presentation is the role of social media and its impact on the age group and how it affects their decisions, and especially how it impacts their views on sexuality, which of course leads to my comment on the issue of research. It is clear the department faces a number of challenges, and the main one is that the department does not have current and useful research, as pointed out by Honorable van der Walt in her comments. If we don't understand the problem, and then any solution will seem to work. And the teenage pregnancy in South Africa, with a specific focus on school-going learners, that study, Chair, was completed in 2009. It's over 10 years out of date. The world has changed dramatically in 10 years, specifically when it comes to social media and access to information and how our children are educating themselves even. The impact evaluation of school-based sexuality and HIV prevention education activity in South Africa does not reflect the demographics in South Africa. And it was stated also by Honorable Dbe. To start, it focuses on only 2 of the provinces. And then the midline study was sent, is not complete. It says inline data, survey data, and biomarkers will be collected between July and October 2018. Has the study now been completed? And if so, can we please receive the final report? Chair, the Sowetan in April 2020, it states the following: a senior departmental official confirmed this study to the progressive student movement at a meeting with them in March. Was this the final study or the midline study? The portfolio committee was sent in the meantime. I want to note that I waited for 6 months to receive a response on my query. And it's interesting that a senior department official took time to address a progressive student movement, but took 6 months to respond to me. It is not clear how the study relates to the CSE trial in 2020, because it was supposed to be completed before then. So if I can get clarity on that. And also, was the CSE trial delayed? For the research to be useful, Chair, it needs to be conducted before the trial. So, and then after, so that we can see what the effects of the CSE trial was. I have asked this question, of course, again, I think in December, and also we didn't get feedback on that. So I've reviewed the research agenda for 2019-2023, and I don't see any planned research on teenage pregnancy or CSE. Is the DBE planning any research on these subjects? And if not, why not? The research in the US has showed that 10% of learners have been sexually abused at school by educators or staff. When is the DBE planning to do research into this? I've also highlighted that the DBE needs to improve its engagement model and processes, and again, Honorable Dbe brought it up. CSE is rejected by many because of the insufficient engagement and also the manner of engagement. I must highlight. So, which directorate is responsible for engagement and community relations? And then what is the DBE's engagement policy? Do you have a policy document on engagement? How do we measure stakeholder satisfaction with the engagement? And can we please have the policy forwarded to us? And I ask these questions because there were a few areas of concern for us in 2019 when it came to engagement with the DBE on this. Does the DBE have a system that allows stakeholders to register as interested and affected parties? And at slide 49, it states that images used in the curriculum are based on protocols and standards set by the DBE. Can we please know what standards are these, and can they be sent to us? Does the DBE engage with stakeholders on standards? And if so, who are these stakeholders? In slide 46 includes morals, life skills, and values. Who did the DBE engage with to develop this content? None of the research measures the effectiveness of the CSE program against other programs. You are only measuring educational programs against either doing nothing or other educational programs. We have the two extremes. It is like saying that, you know, I will walk from Cape Town to Joburg. It's a good way to travel because at least I'm taking a step and I'm walking. So we need innovative, and we need to find the best ways to get our young girls and women, young women to the destination, which was highlighted by my colleague, for them to lead a meaningful life. So, Chair, I am almost done. I just want to ask the last one, which is, when choosing to do the CSE program, what other alternatives did DBE consider? What best of breed, alternative and outside the box solutions did the DBE consider? I have a few more other questions, Chair, but I'm aware of the time. I am going to send the DBE a list of my questions in writing as well, and if I can get timeliest response, it would be valued. I want to join Honorable van der Walt just lastly to say that the emphasis is always on the girl child, and we need to put emphasis on educating boys, and we need to focus interventions not on single students, and shouldn't put the burden only on girls. We need to research these boys and target their behavior and address it, and have specific programs that are focused on them. I also want to I've mentioned, Chair, lastly, the issue of social media. We talk a lot about fourth industrial revolution and all of that, artificial intelligence. Why aren't we using exactly the same tools here when it comes to comprehensive sexuality education that the department mentions, or to address the problem? How is the DBE using big data, artificial intelligence to address pregnancy crises? Those are my questions, Chair. I hope it was very clear. If not, if the department can indicate, then I will gladly send it to them. Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Advance.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Let me greet the Honorable Deputy Minister, Dr. Mahaule, leading the team of basic education and DG, with all the officials that are present, honorable members of the Portfolio Committee. And thank you very much for the opportunity, Chair, and also appreciating the presentations that were very informative, that were giving us progress since our last meeting on the specific issues that we're dealing with. Chair, I would also like to join the queue and commend the department for the good work that they've done so far. We know it is not enough. We need more, work to be done, and it needs all of us, not to be judgmental, but to assist, with all the minds and brains on how are we going to deal with this matter, because it's not only a matter that needs to be addressed by basic education alone. It needs, all the stakeholders, to try harder to assist, with this, the other pandemic, as one of the members has put it, rightfully so, that we are faced with. We saw how, during COVID-19 lockdown, how departments, came together and worked in making sure that they address all the issues in saving lives and saving livelihood after that. We saw how, they rapidly assisted one another in making sure that they put systems in place when the schools have to be opened. And I believe we need such collaborations to address this issue. It's an issue that it's very thorny to many of us, if not all of us, you know, not just as leaders, not just as members of parliament, but also as parents living, you know, in communities. It's very painful to see how some of our young people are perishing. The issue of, you know, teenage pregnancy, the issue of, you know, drug abuse, our kids are being raped, our kids are being, you know, human trafficked. There are so many things that are happening right under our nose, and some of them are not even aware that they're happening. So it's a matter that really needs us to put our heads together and try to work on them, because the department can only do as much, you know, with the limited resources, with the time in our hands, making sure that they provide, you know, education, you know, basic education to learners, in making sure that they develop our learners, you know, as best as they know how, and preparing them for, you know, the future. And also in making sure that they participate, you know, in this economy of our country, and also being, you know, responsible adults in future. But the way we are going, we are facing a very serious challenge. The report we received today, Chair, spoke about the high rate of teenage pregnancy, and also that contributes also to a high rate of learners dropouts. It shows that some of the things, it's a problem that is, you know, it's inclusive of even our society. It needs our parents or parents of, you know, learners at school to play a role, a huge role, because before the learners become, you know, learners at school, they are first children at home. So all these things, when they happen, there is a role that parents must play, and a very important one. I would agree with, you know, honorable members that spoke about our own African cultural, you know, values that we really need to look at and also promote in some of the good practices that we know and grew up with. And we really need to make sure that we leave that kind of a legacy, and we educate our learners, or even our children, how to, you know, to behave, and also allow them to grow up as kids or as children, and also to have that, you know, time to enjoy life. Because really what now is happening, they have been robbed of, you know, of their right to be children in this country. When we see the reports of about 64%, if not more, of learner pregnancies, and some of, you know, those numbers, the young girls are found to be HIV positive. That on its own is a criminal offense to me. And you ask yourself, what is it that you know, the justice system is doing about it? I think we really need to look to that far, to say, even though we are here at the school level, and our role as teachers and as you know, as the department is limited to this far. But what happens to when you hear that a child has dropped out, like the case of a 9-year-old? You ask yourself, how can a 9-year-old be impregnated? Who does that? What has happened to that person? It's questions that we need to ask ourselves and really deal with them, because those, you know, it's a statutory rape of some sort. It's abuse of our own children, of our own future, that is being robbed out of our own children. Chair, I believe we saw how, you know, cases of gender-based violence have rise during, you know, the lockdown periods, where also there were cases of rape, you know, of rape that were reported. And it is really worrisome to say, if we have such challenges when we are locked with our own kids at home, what is it that we're expecting, you know, the second person to do? The second person being a teacher, being, you know, a caregiver, or, you know, a principal. What is it that we think they must do? If ourselves as parents, before anything else, we are failing, you know, to take care of our own kids, be it as a mother or be it as a father, you know, it's something that we really need to look at, you know. The role of, you know, the school governing bodies, how empowered are they to deal with such issues? You know, if they are aware, because SGBs are parents, SGBs are living amongst the society, they see the challenges that families in particular are having, you know, and how are they, you know, able to bring such cases and such information in making sure that they process them and they find amicable solutions in dealing with them. Because, you know, for me, I think it is too much for a teacher or an educator at school to look for to look after 30 learners in a class, and also have to worry about a child outside, you know, the schoolyard. How are their well-being, and how are you going to cope and make sure that you assist that kind of a learner in that regard? So it's a matter that really needs us to deal with it, you know, as a, you know, as a unit. And one other matter that I think it is also a burning issue, and I think it needs also to be highlighted. You know, the silence of, you know, the voice of the very same stakeholder that we were speaking of, all the same, you know, learners that we're speaking of. They must be involved in making sure that when we are dealing with, you know, policy formulations, they play a crucial role in making sure that their voices are heard and their views are captured, so that we know exactly how are they supposed to be assisted. We might be thinking that putting, you know, making all this research, using all our, you know, our knowledge and skills will assist them, but we forget to engage the very same person that is affected, which is a learner. So in this regard, I did not capture much on you know, the learner, you know, participation, you know, in this regard, but I really appreciate, you know, the comprehensive sexuality education, because, you know, even in our time, we were not privy to such information. There were many learners who dropped out, who did not finish matric because they fell pregnant. And you know, it was something that you would never even, you know, speak about, even at your own home. You know, it was actually, I don't know how to call it, but it was like, it was a topic that it was ignored. You must never ever talk about sex with your parents, even just in your surroundings, at your own home, where you must feel safe. So it is something that we grew up, you know, seeing happening in front of us. Some will even, you know, be impregnated in a church, where a child will go attend a choir and come back, you know, being pregnant. So this challenge is not only a new thing, and it's not only, you know, a departmental issue. It's an issue that needs all of us to deal with, and it's an issue that it needs to be engaged with each and every member of the community, because we grew up knowing that it takes a village to raise a child. Now it means everybody must be involved. We must be safeguarding our own children, regardless of whether it's our biological or not a biological kids, but it should be our responsibility. And we really need to hear voices of men, like Honorable Lucia indicated. We need to hear those voices, because most of the time, if not all the time, they are the perpetrators who abuse these children, who rape these kids, who, you know, are supposed to take care of them, but they are the ones who are, you know, playing at the vulnerability of our children. So, you know, if we could hear more male voices coming out, in talking about, you know, campaigning in some sort of a way, in making sure that we resolve this matter, because we have this, you know, now 64% that were reported of young girls that are pregnant. Who are the fathers? Where are they? What kind of a role are they playing? Who's supposed to monitor, you know, the participation of such, you know, fathers in the role of not only the young mother, but also a child that is going to be, you know, be given birth to. So those are my some of my concern, Chairperson. But for me, I believe as a committee, we must make it our task to monitor whether there are policies in place at the school level. I think earlier the principal indicated that there are policies that might be at the national level, but are they, you know, coordinated in such a way that they reach each and every learner or at a level of the school? Are they implemented at that level? It's amongst us to make sure that we as and when we do even oversight, or even when we meet with the department, would want to have some kind of a monitoring system to make sure that all the cases that, you know, we hear of, you know, tracing of these young people when they drop out, what was the challenge? Because it's not only teenage pregnancy, even the boys, there are many boys who are dropping out. And this thing of, you know, learners and dropping out, it's also a problem because we can't find them, you know, where do they end up in society? So it's an issue that I think we really need to look and zoom into and make sure that we get progress. You know, we do all this work to get progress in making sure that we scale down the challenges that are being, you know, highlighted in this in this meeting today. So, Chair, in those few words, thank you very much to the department and all leaders that are taking this matter to their own, you know, hands to say it is also my responsibility to make sure that we safeguard, you know, the rights of our children by making sure that they stay as children up until they are matured enough to be adults. So, Chair, thank you very much. Let me pause there.
Thank you. Honorable Van der Walt, you want to raise something quickly?
Yeah, Chair, thanks for allowing me. I just am quite curious, and maybe I don't understand why, but the figures in this presentations are up to 19, which of course is not at all school-going age. So if we can get a clarity on that, because that might affect our stats as well, and surely then it becomes crucial that we distinguish between criminal actions and social ones throughout. And Chair, yeah, I just wanted to add it. I did raise the issue of the male learners at school, but I've submitted a written question. I'll await the outcomes of that, because surely we can't just have stats on the girls. There must be boy learners that stats must surely be available in some way as well. Thank you.
All right. No, thanks very much to everyone that has participated in terms of questioning the department. I think all of us, we are in agreement that this is a very emotional and a very sensitive topic that we are discussing today, which is not actually for the first time that we are dealing with the issues of CSE and teenage pregnancy. So, and generally, I think all the members that have spoken, they are raising concerns, and they are raising advices to the department on how they think the matter should be dealt with, because I think all of us, we are dealing with the matter as a matter that we see it's a matter very close to us. It's a matter that needs all of us to become, but rather discuss honestly and frankly, how do we deal? My issue here is that, you know, we all raising children through grace. There is no one who can say I have perfected how to raise a child, because there's no formula that really guides people how to raise children. And I just want to have few issues to raise that were raised from both the topics in the presentation. There is an issue that you raised, Dr. Whittle, on the prevention and management of learner pregnancy, which you have said it's a draft policy of 2021. Can you help us unpacking probably what is entailed in this policy? And then there is a slide that addresses the HIV prevention. What I miss in that slide is how about the prevention of the learner pregnancy? Because you are just addressing the HIV, but then it does not speak on the learner pregnancy, and I think it's probably something that I have missed, which you would be able to give when you respond. I think many members have spoken at length with regards to stakeholders that are used by the department, which myself as well, I do appreciate all the initiatives that the department is doing to assist our children. But these stakeholders, they are not reaching our homes. They don't go to where these problems are. And I want to couple what I'm raising with what Honorable Sugars raised, for instance, that the Human Rights Commission wants parents, for instance, to decide what their children should be taught. There's nothing wrong with that, but we need to be realistic. We need to see things how we see them, not from only at our homes. It is only focused and responsible parents that can be allowed to do that. And if you go deeper, going to these children that are affected by the teenage pregnancy and so on, you would realize that one, they are children who are coming from parents who drink 24 hours a day. They only stop when they sleep. Now, such parents are not responsible parents. And they are children who are coming from homes where there are high levels of poverty, which in many instances forces parents not to be able to raise their kids and be there full-time, because they would have to leave your rural areas and go to urban areas to find jobs, and they leave their children alone. Now, that is the reality. I mean, the statistics here was saying in the presentations that the Northern Cape is the province actually with high numbers of these teenage pregnancies. And it should be true because there are high levels of poverty in that province. So you link that and you link with the fact that the same province is having challenges of many people who drink. So it tells you these are the result of these teenage pregnancies. So the issue of families, the issue of communities, the issue of rather how do we make the parents talk to their children. For instance, we are 50 here, we are 49 now in this meeting. And you would ask yourself, out of these 49 people that are here, how many of us, when we eat breakfast and dinner, sit with children around the table and talk with them? At this level, because we are supposed to be seen as the highest level in the country. But how many of us do that? How many of us are sitting with children and talk with them? And I think it's very few. Yes, we might have a lot of food in our homes, but we don't use that food effectively. We don't use it effectively to sit with our children, understand what is it that they are going through, because it's either we are busy or it's because our background and our culture has not taught us to do that. So the point that I'm trying to raise here is that it needs parents, it is a personal matter, but also it does have an issue of where we're coming from, who are we? And you look into these children that get to be pregnant, the reality is that they are Black and African children. You don't get mostly white children that are affected by this situation. And that is the reality. So we can't run away from the fact of who we are and where we find ourselves in. It might not suit me as Bongiwe that the department must take a decision for my child, must teach, must have sex education for my child. But the reality is that I'm at a situation that is far better to talk with my children, because I do support them. But in many communities, and many children go to school without getting that support. Like I am saying, they don't even see their parent sober, for instance. There are children who don't see their parent as being a sober parent, let alone talking with them as a child. So I think it's a matter, hence I'm saying, I think it's a matter that needs us to be very calm when we deal with it and understand that there are many issues, and you wouldn't want also to deal with this matter to an extent where you are going to divide it based on racial lines, based on who have and who have not, because that's where it will take us. That's where it will take us. It's only those parents that have a culture of sitting around the table with their children, have breakfast or have dinner, and speak with their children. And many of us don't do that. And the other issue that I want to raise, Dr. Whittle, there is a slide on where you are raising that the South Africa actually is the highest country compared with other countries with regards to teenage pregnancy. And you have given an example of Malawi. But my interest is it real? Is it really throughout SADC, are we the country that is having a highest number of and I'm not saying that I'm testing how you are raising it, but I'm just raising really, or I'm raising it from a point of being shocked out of the whole SADC city about that are having these pregnant teenagers so much as a country. And be that as it may, then what do we do as a country? What is our strategy as a country? Because you would find, for instance, like countries in the same SADC, countries like Uganda, where they would use your ABC as their strategy, where even a child that is in grade R knows that ABC is the way to go. When, as this country, get to a situation where our children at a very youngest age understand and know that, you know, as a child in grade R, being a 5-year-old, that you abstain, you be faithful, you condomize, and so on and so on. So we need to get to it. It means then we need to get very seriously at that level in our country. So I thought those are issues really that I must raise from my side, and to emphasize, you know, that there are many factors into this issue, and probably that is why now and then we want to have this topic in front of us, debate it, and talk about it, because it does not have to be political. It is not a political debate, but it is a national frustration. It is a national crisis, which need all of us to be sober when deal with it, not deal with it based on who am I, who is Bongiwe, and how is Bongiwe's lifestyle, but rather try to deal with it and look at it as parents, one, but two, as leaders that are supposed also to have our own input wherever we go in our constituencies, to have our own input in changing the mindset of our societies, because ours should be to assist where we can, ours should be to help where we can, and the reality is, and I think every day we get to be engaged in this portfolio committees, we now understand more that there is a difference, and there is a difference in an educated and an uneducated person. And that is the reality. And most of our people are still not educated at a level where they would understand issues that would change their cultural set, how they were raised doing them. So I think I must just pause there and allow DM to lead in responding to the questions, and then everybody then in the department would respond following the DM. Thank you, Deputy Minister.
Chair?
Yes, I
Chairperson?
allow you to speak, DM.
Thank you so much, Chair. We welcome all the inputs and the questions by members. As I would always say, Chair, that statistical questions, sometimes we may not give ready-made answers now. And if we could have given all the information, like what is entailed in the policy, what number of boys, which areas, which provinces, I think by now would still be presenting. But I'm not saying that that information may not be available. Chair, this matter, as you correctly put it again, it's a societal matter. We can put it to be a Department of Education, basic education matter, but we are responsible for these learners 8 hours a day. All the other hours they are at home. And most of the time they get pregnant in the society, not at school. If we can look at the numbers, it tells that most of these young girls are impregnated, as Honorable van der Walt said, by relatives, by their biological fathers and stepfathers and uncles. They are the ones, and this is happening at home. So we can come up with mechanisms of fighting HIV, but of fighting pregnancy, it may not be easy, because even if you can teach them maybe at that age that they condomize at the age, but at home, the condom, a girl cannot condomize, it's only a man, because I remember Minister Aaron Mutsualedi once said that it's only a man who can condomize. There's nothing called a woman condom because it's the man who decides whether the woman should put that condom or not. So that's why he said, according to him, they just do manufacture the women condoms, but we must use it at the consent of the man. So as I was saying that on the statistical questions, we might not give all the answers, but it has to do with the moral decay in the society, the teenage pregnancy, moral decay. And we must include all sectors of the society, and they must be led by leaders in the society itself, because it's sometimes very difficult as basic education can call a community meeting. That cannot happen. But when we are invited as basic education into a community meeting, we come and present statistics to them. Then the community can decide what do they want to do with their children, what future do they foresee. That's why I say issues of moral decay, cultural setup, because these are matters of culture, which religion is inside. And if we, as the community, now I'm not talking as a department, as a community, we can focus on moral regeneration, all of us together. I think we can fight the moral decay which leads to this dying society. We have so many causes, but all the causes, when you look at them, they emanate from the community itself. Very few that can come from a school wherein a teacher can impregnate. And Chairperson, parents, when the child is pregnant by a relative or even the biological father, you find the biological mother sitting on top of that thing, don't want it to be made known. So, I mean, and teachers, that can come as a rumor to a school that this child has been impregnated by the father. But even if you want to go and open a case, how are we going to open a case if the mother will say, no, it's not, we are dealing with it as a family? Even if we have been told as education, there are issues that 90% of these issues, they need strong, coherent communities, and that will help us. But let me not talk too much because the time is moving. Can I allow the DG and Dr. Whittle and other colleagues, if they feel like they want to add on the questions, especially by Honorable Sukers and Honorable Tembegwayo and Honorable Van der Vaart. So I allow DG and the team, Dr. Whittle in particular, and everybody, that let's respond to the specific questions. Thank you. Over to you, DG, if you're still.
No, DM,
in the
let
meeting.
me just interrupt you, DM.
Okay.
No, just to say with you, to you, DM, with all necessary due respect, that, you know, this answer, every time you answer it, that's your first answer, that the statistics is not here. And I think it can't be accepted, DM, because we don't want that answer from you. You've got very qualified, very professional officials with you. Actually, these policies are made by them. These policies that I'm speaking about is in the slide and is drafted by Dr. Whittle. So he is supposed to speak on it. He is supposed to unpack what is in the policy, because he is the drafter of that policy, and that is what we are raising. You can't every meeting you are preventing the officials to give us the answers. That is the reason we are having these meetings. We want those answers. That are statistics. They are working on those statistics every day. They are supposed to have those statistics. Thank you very much, DM.
Thank you so much, Chair. You are very, very correct. I mean extended answers on something that was not part of the report. But on what is in the report, I will never deny officials opportunity to give answers to members, because we are here to give answers. But I'm saying when we are reporting about this, and then we say, no, tell us about what happened in January, what happened in February, etc., etc. We might not, but I'm not saying that the officials do not have those statistics. But my point is to emphasize on the point on the table that we are here to present on the teenage pregnancy and comprehensive sexuality education. But the answer to say how many girls, how many boys, how many in which school, in which province might not be here, but I'm not saying that we may not have that answer. That's why I start first and allow officials to come, that where they said, DM said, we do have this information. But thank you to remind us that we must allow officials to give all information like we always do. DG, are you in the meeting?
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Minister, Honorable Chair, and Honorable Members. DM, my situation is compounded by the rain, the mist, and the meandering mountains of the country. So I'll do my best to respond to what I'm able to respond to. In fact, DM, you are absolutely right. The information we have, we give it immediately. Standard practice is that what is not available after the meeting within 7 days, we provide that information. So that will be provided. Let me start with Honorable Dr. Dbe. Parents are encouraged to report cases. We do engage with organized formation of parents, association of school governing bodies, but we also encourage them in public in our communication for parents to do so. We also deal with matters where parents' situation has been manipulated, as it was stated by some members, where parents are discouraged from reporting such cases. We do deal with them and we bring in law enforcement agencies to do so. SAFE also plays a very important role in this regard. Chair, before I forget, my humble advice to the committee is that given the magnitude of this matter, it might be worth a while to consider next time that when we present a report on gender-based violence like we did a few days ago, we couple that with this topic, given the importance of this matter. Honorable Suker, we are indeed familiar with the issues that you have raised, but for me, you went quite fast, and I would appreciate if I could get a list of things that you had put out. Dr. Whittle will respond to those that he was able to capture, but I will ensure that it doesn't take 6 months for us to respond to your questions. It only takes 6 months or more if information is not in our purview, but if it's within our purview, I can assure you that we'll make sure that we provide the answers that you need, as stipulated in terms of the practice of the committee. Honorable Murateka, thank you very much. And I think the debate and the issues in the meeting today have characterized the nature of the issue that we are dealing with. And I really appreciate the contribution by all honorable members that this is a matter that requires the broader civil society to engage with it. And I think speaker after speaker confirmed that, right from the minister to the chair who was the last member to speak on this matter. It's very clear that we have a big task to deal with on this matter. And I think we will not fail, all of us, to make sure that we make a contribution in addressing the challenge that is before us. Honorable Suker, I forgot to indicate that the National Education Policy Act defines the stakeholders that we need to deal with. We're dealing with internally in the department, it's organized formations of teachers, organized formation of school governing bodies, organized formations of professional bodies, including organized formations of learners. We also deal with the public in terms of inviting the public to make comments. It's one of our biggest stakeholders. We've got a civil society forum which represents over 600 organizations, including NGOs in education. We meet with them regularly, organized by the National Education Collaboration Trust. Honorable Hendricks, thank you very much for your advice that we should not be Eurocentric in our approach in infusing values in our education, and indeed indigenous knowledge and African values are considered in our approach, but we'll definitely do more, even in dealing with a matter of this nature, bringing other African institutions and other leaders who can help us in this regard. Honorable van der Waals, well, I'm sorry that you are not happy with the response that you have received. I will look at that. My responsibility is to make sure that you respond adequately to questions that are asked in Parliament. I'll go back to our response to your questions and do my best to make sure that we adequately respond to the questions that you have raised. I'm not sure about the issue of 19-year-olds. We do have 19-year-olds in the system. We do even have up to 26-year-olds because of high failure and repetition rate. We do have those ages, but I'm sure Dr. Whittle can clarify that because I heard you saying you are concerned that this might actually create a very false impression or create a very false picture about the statistics that we are getting. Honorable Lissie, I'm humbled by the fact that you canvass members of the committee and you, in a way, canvass South Africa that we must rally behind the notion of dealing with this issue as a challenge to the nation. And I really want to convey our greatest appreciation and thanks to you. Honorable Suela, you've made the point. People have different views. You've made a very good point. They have different views. Some of them are informed by their beliefs and so on. But also, whilst the parents and civil society has a role, it's important that nobody imposes their views and their roles on others to be the dominant views that should inform the direction of the country. And I think you have articulated the issue very well. The moral and the constitutional duty of the department to provide comprehensive sexuality education. Honorable Adun, thank you also for your contribution and appreciating the work that we do. And indeed, I fully agree with the observations that you have made. We need to do more to educate our learners. And I must say also, as Honorable Sukers and Honorable van der Waals said, it's not only about the girl learner, we need to strike that balance. In the past, we used to focus on the girl learner only. We are attempting to close that gap as well. And Honorable Chair, I wouldn't really agree more with your observation on how you characterize this issue. Dr. Whittle will clarify the issue of the draft policy. And I can assure you, Chair, the information in terms of the statistics that we have, we will immediately make available, but the one that is not available as it is standard practice within 7 days, that will be made available. Dr. Whittle, I've tried my best while driving and responding to questions as raised by honorable members, but hands-free, I can assure you it's hands-free. My hands are on the steering wheel. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair, honorable members, and honorable Deputy Minister. Dr. Whittle, you can cover the rest. Thank you.
Thank you very much, DG, and thank you very much to the Deputy Minister and the Chair as well. I think that you've adequately covered, quite a wide range of some of the issues that that were raised. In terms of the comments by Honourable van der Walt, around the up to 19 years old. So we have that cutoff because we can be assured that those that particular category would probably be in school. Just to point out to Honourable van der Walt and other members that we rely primarily on three data sets to track learner pregnancy. The one is live births from the Department of Health. The other one is recorded births at the Department of Home Affairs. And then the third one is probably the most unreliable, which is the self-reporting of schools that is recorded through EMIS. And so what we try and do is to always triangulate those so that we provide, probably the most accurate data to committees and other stakeholders. The issue of boys, if I understand it correctly, Honourable van der Walt, is whether we capture boys who have impregnated girl learners at school. And the simple answer to that is we don't at the moment. And it is very difficult to track that. We've been looking with a team in preparation for this meeting, the birth registrations at the Department of Home Affairs. And there's a big category of women that are reporting births between 55 and 70. So, women that are saying that they have given birth to children at those ages. And so our reading of that is that those are probably women who know that their children have been raped. They probably know the men who have done so. And so they choose to record those births as their own instead of, reporting those matters to the police and dealing with those issues. Honourable van der Walt, I agree. It kind of ties in with the point that you've made that, one of my colleagues refers to this as paying damages, where older men go to families and they pay them off. And as a result, those are either recorded as being somebody else's pregnancy, and that's how the cases are closed. Just in terms of the grades that Honourable van der Walt has asked about, it is very difficult for us to track because, one of the things that the Department of Health is reluctant to do is to force, young girls and women in facilities to then provide a range of information to the Department of Health that would then be passed on to others that would not encourage them to come to health facilities. And so because of the vulnerability of this particular category of women during childbirth, we obviously want all of them to come to facilities. But I do think, Honourable van der Walt, that we could possibly do this by proxy. And so we will look at, like DG says, we can certainly from our branch work with the EMIS, work with the EMIS colleagues to see, whether we can improve the quality of the data that we've provided in response to the question that you've asked. Certainly, we can provide you with the provinces where these girls and young women are located. In terms of the suggestion that you have made, Honourable van der Walt, in terms of the practical year for therapists, the good thing about COVID is that in some of our provinces, working with the Department of Health and Department of Social Development, we have managed during the course of last year to actually place some therapists as well as social workers in some of our schools, and certainly I take the point that that's something that we can continue to to do and to work with those other government departments on. Honorable Temba Kwayo, DG has addressed the recurring theme that has come from the committee around consultations. So I'm not going to get into that, but the simple answer to your question about whether those figures include rape, yes, they do. So all of those figures that you see there are live births, and they do include children that would have been raped by, by men. How are they included in policy related matters? Those are the issues that the DG has responded to already. Let's talk, who are these young people that participate? So prior to COVID, honorable member, we organized what we call jamborees, where we bring schools of young people together. They then get career guidance. They have several talks about GBV or HIV or teen pregnancy. And we have done those throughout the country. In fact, one of the items in the business plan for our conditional grant for life skills is that provinces need to organize those engagements with young people. Unfortunately, because of COVID, we've scaled those back quite significantly, but our Deputy Minister has had several online discussions together with a few other Deputy Ministers, with some of our sister departments, to reach out and talk to young people. And I think in the last meeting, we did present some of those details to you. The core services and the layers and which schools can participate. So we work at the moment, as I've indicated, in high HIV burden districts. There's a range of criteria that we use working with SANAC and other government departments to have identified those. And sometimes within the district, we may identify a sub-district that is particularly vulnerable. We could certainly, from our side, provide a list of all of the schools, both high schools and primary schools, that are on the program with us. We do allow, in some instances, we would have a principal that would write to us and then indicate that they're struggling with very high rates of teen pregnancy, and we are then able to redirect some of our resources to include some of those schools. The Learner and Educator Mentorship Program, and whether there's been an evaluation, there has been. There's been a full evaluation conducted of the DREAMS program. I think that ended in 2020 or 2019, but certainly we can make that a report available to honourable member. The Zimela, I unfortunately don't know the sample size of that particular study. As I've indicated, Honourable Temba Kwayo, it's a study that was conducted in the Western Cape, and we can certainly make both the study and the sample size available to you. I think DG has addressed Honourable Siwela's questions and comments. I really struggled to hear Honourable Siwela, and I agree with DG. Honourable Sukers was really fast for me, but I tried to capture as much of it as I could. So the study that Honourable Sukers is referring to is certainly a study that we can make available. It is the study has been concluded, and I think in 2019, if my memory serves, Honourable Sukers, the study was presented to the South African National AIDS Conference, but the study is available and certainly something that we can make available to you. Then you asked that 10%, if I heard you correctly, in the US, 10% of children are abused. And just to indicate that we don't always conduct the research ourselves, primarily because of the cost, associated with it. But we do rely on a wide range of institutions, often our higher education institutions. We rely on the research that they conduct. There's been some interesting research that's been conducted, under the COVID period by the Children's Institute at the University of Cape Town. They've produced 8 advisories. We've certainly looked at those advisories very carefully, and one of the advisories focus on violence and abuse. And if the honourable member wants, we could certainly make those available. The interested, Honourable Sukur says that she would be interested in the standards and the protocols that the presentation refers to, and certainly, Honourable Sukur, I've made a note of that. We can make that available. When choosing to do CSE, what alternatives have we considered? One of the alternatives has also been referred to by the Honourable Chairperson when she spoke about the ABC. And Honourable Sukur would remember that in our initial response to the HIV pandemic, we promoted quite actively abstinence, be faithful, and condomize. There's been a number of quite comprehensive studies done on the impact of that, and certainly all of those show that the particular strategy has not rendered the expected results, and that's why in South Africa as a country we then changed course. But certainly I can find those studies and make those studies available, either to the honourable member or to the committee. And then lastly, as far as Honourable Sukur, is concerned, I agree with you, Honourable Sukur, on the importance of boys. There's some very interesting trends that are beginning to show in the 2017 HSRC prevalence study that shows that in fact the rates of incidents for boys are beginning to tick up. And so that's an important warning sign, I think, for us, but also in terms of the high rates of gender-based violence. There's a study done by Professor Rachel Jukes at the Medical Research Council, and she and her team were tracking boys and girls having relationships in schools, and also tracking HIV infection and pregnancy. And they found really high rates of gender-based violence in school-based children. And that's quite scary, because it means that those are the learnings that boys kind of internalize very early on, and is another reason why I think we need to begin to work more aggressively to provide programming for boys. It is a blind spot at the moment, Chairperson. I think we have, as a country, rightly focused probably for the last 20 years on ensuring that girls can take their rightful place in society. Now girls are outcompeting boys in high school. There's more girls in high school than boys, and there's more young women going to a higher education institution than boys. And so this is an important blind spot, I think, that we have to address going forward. And just to welcome Honourable Sukur's suggestion about the use of social media in addressing some of these really complex societal matters, and certainly something that we will give further attention to. Just to also like DG to welcome the comments of Honourable Adouans, in terms of encouraging strong collaboration, also acknowledging that this is something that we need to do together to support the young girls and women. I think I've addressed many of the concerns raised by Honourable van der Walt, and then just in conclusion, Chair, to comment on some of the issues that you've raised. So the draft policy that we've developed and that we have presented to Cabinet for final approval is really a response to the measures to manage teenage pregnancy that was published by the then Department of Education, I think in 2007 or 2008. And those measures advocated for both boys and girls who fell pregnant. So if a boy impregnated a girl, the measures then advocated for them to be excluded from school for a period of 2 years. Now, part of the reason why we initiated the study in 2009, which is what Honourable Sukus referred to, was to look at the impact of that particular policy guidance that we had issued to schools. We got taken to court on those policy provisions by 2 schools in the Free State, and we lost the case in the Constitutional Court, and the Constitutional Court then said to us to provide a new policy that would not exclude girls from attending schools after they have been pregnant. So the policy provisions are, as I've said in the presentation, Chair, is there are 5 key pillars of it. The first one being an enabling environment. The second one is based on prevention. The third on care, counseling and support. The fourth one on impact mitigation. So if learners have been off school, what can a school do to support them, on their return? And then the fifth one is to provide for a policy management and coordination mechanism that allows us to then effectively implement. The issue, Chair, that you've raised about the slide on HIV and pregnancy, and maybe the slide just isn't clear, but there's a direct link between HIV acquisition and pregnancy. Because if you fall pregnant, it's really a proxy for the fact that you've had unprotected sexual intercourse, and that's really a sign of a risk for HIV infection. But certainly it's a point well taken that the Honourable Chair is making there. DG has kind of covered us on the stakeholder issue that you've raised, and the last one that you've raised was on that 4.4 million. The slide actually refers to HIV prevalence. So there's a number of quite a high number, and South Africa does in fact have the highest prevalence rate as far as this particular cohort is concerned in the world. Thank you, Chairperson. I hope that I've done justice to all of the questions that have been answered, asked. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I was checking as they were responding if everything is covered. But I do get that the issues like how many boys, how many girls are not covered, issues of Honourable van der Walt wanted real statistics. I think if members can have those questions in writing, that the department will respond to. Like the question of Honourable Sukers on CSE, that what alternative curriculum can we provide instead of CSE? I don't think that was covered that much, because the comprehensive sexuality education is not something new that it started in 2020 or 2021. It comes far back. So it was there. It was just that there was an improvement of the material that raised the noise as if it's something new. But I think that if she's not satisfied, she can put it in writing, then we will respond. So, yeah, I think most of the things are covered and are responded to. The role of the media. When we address issues of bullying on school safety, that's why we work with ministers of police, ministers of home affairs, the security cluster, including communications, so that we address issues of cyberbullying. We know that if one child can be pregnant or can be raped and it gets known and they will put it in the social media, the child will want to commit suicide or whatever. We're trying with this awareness program that we have of anti-bullying, we are addressing such things, because if a child is pregnant, he's still a human being. He still needs to be respected. But people will just put it on a social media and ridicule the child, and it becomes an issue. I think that's one question came from Honorable Sukas on the issue of the media, but and on social media. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, DM, DG, and Dr. Whittle. I see there's the end of Honorable Sugars. We are
Yes,
running out
Chair.
of time, though.
I will be very quick, Chair. I just need to clarify something. Can I go ahead?
Proceed.
I just want to clarify my question on social media was what research was done to look at how what the impact of social media and how it informs the views of children on sexuality. And then in response to what was mentioned quite a few times by yourself included, Chair, on the issue of comprehensive sexuality education, I want to state here that South Africa is a state party signatory to the conventions to the rights of the child. And it states that state parties shall respect the responsibilities, rights, and duties of parents, or where applicable, the members of the extended family or community as provided for by local custom. Legal guardians or other persons legally responsible for the child to provide in a manner consistent with the evolving capacities of the child, appropriate direction and guidance in the exercise by the child of the rights recognized in the present convention. We cannot separate culture and beliefs in the education of children, and especially when it comes to morality. It's impossible. We cannot convolute the issues. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Honorable Sukers. We are discussing this matter, and I'm watching TV here on 405. They are saying 1 in 5 children are victims of sexual abuse in South Africa. I just thought I need to share. Thank you very much, DM, DG, and thank you everybody that has responded to our issues. Yeah, it's 10 to 1. Let me allow the department to leave us so we can quickly adopt the minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy that the question clarified by Honorable Sukers has been answered by Dr. Whittle. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, DM. Ewan, can you quickly flight the minutes for us?
Chairperson, yeah, I have one set of minutes and one draft report.
Okay. Okay, this is the minutes of the. Oh, sorry. This is the minutes of the 31st of August. We had a virtual meeting where we had a briefing from the department on the department and says on the second chance metric and continuing professional teacher development. Page 1 is the attendance. Page 2 is the attendance as well. Page 3 is the attendance, and we opened the meeting We were welcoming Honorable Litsie, who replaced Honorable Malachi. The agenda was moved by Honorable Advance, seconded by Honorable Litsie. And we had an address by the Deputy Minister, Dr. Mhaule. And then there was a presentation on second chance matric, which was done by Dr. Malapile. And then we had a presentation on teacher development programs for math, science, and technology, which was done by Mr. Rabutapi and Dr. Polia. And then those were our observations. And then we had responses from the department, which were led by the DM, the DG, and then Dr. Malapila, and then the Deputy Minister, Dr. Polia. And then we concluded the meeting by considering and adopted the minutes of the 24th of August and the minutes of the 25th of August, and then the meeting adjourned at 11:13. Any corrections? Can we adopt the minutes?
Chairperson,
Yes, Dr. Borotsecha.
my hand is up. I rise to move that these minutes be adopted as a true reflection of what transpired on the date in question.
Thank you very much. Any seconder?
Chairperson,
Yes, that is well.
it's Ngcobo, Honorable Chairperson. Yes, Chairperson. No, I rise to say to second the motion to adopt the minutes as a true record as proposed by Dr. Roasetla.
How are you, Dr. Polova?
Thank you very much, Mr. Ngcobo. And then we've got a draft report for the quarterly report on the performance of the department in meeting its strategic objective for 2020-2021. We've got an introduction. And then number 2, we've got the performance indicators and targets, which outlines all the programs of the department. We've got the overview and achievements. And then we've got the performance per program. And then we've got the financials per program. And then we've got our observations. And then those are the responses from the department, which were led by the minister, by the DG. Dr. Whitlam. And then these are the recommendations for this report, quarter 4, We've got about, I'm not gonna read all of them, honorable members. You've got them, we've got about 9 recommendations. And then that's the end of the report to be considered by the House. Any corrections? Can we adopt the report?
Adopt, Chair. There's a right.
Honorable van der Walt?
Adopted.
Thank you very much. And there is the end of advance.
Thank you, Chair. I adopt the report.
Thank you very much. Therefore, then the report is adopted. It's going to be sent for ATC. That's about it, honorable members. Just probably, I think, to brief members that all of us who might have seen from Parliament media that there is a possibility that the House will adjourn this coming Friday, as we will going to be on constituency to do our elections work. So that then means our program, it has to end hours, in fact, today, till we come back after the 1st of November, which is then gonna disturb our whole program, because we all understand we were supposed to do BRRRs and we're supposed to do oversights as well in between, but there is nothing we can do. All of us, we know we need to be on the ground and work for the elections. So be that as it may, then it means that we are going to meet after the 1st of November. Yeah, that's it from my side. I don't know if there's any member with any other thing. In the absence of anything, let us then close the meeting by adjourning the meeting and wish every member a very successful constituency period. We must all come back in one piece. Members who have not fully vaccinated must try to be fully vaccinated before we engage vigorously on the ground, because Corona is still there. We would wish to see each other coming back again in November. So well wishes to all the parties. Of course, I think all of us, we are contesting elections. Well wishes till we meet when we come back. Thank you very much, honorable members. The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Chairperson,
Can
you kindly just pass my kind regards to the Honorable Dbe Policy? It's long that I heard his voice. Thank you.
Angazi njalo ukuthi le ndoda yini ifuna ke. Asambe siyokhankasa mrasese.
I was in KZN, I couldn't see him. I'm worried. I'm a worried person.
No, his age doesn't allow us to see him.
Yeah, but otherwise, thank you very much. I'm glad I was able to interact with my all the learned friends, Honorable Dbe Policy.
Izimo shlala.
Kulungile mhlobo wami.
Angisapoti lutho sihlalo for your information.
For now.
I mean in the afternoon, or where are you coming from with for now?
No, in the afternoon you are supporting.